Good morning. Agenda item 1, call to order and roll call. The July 8th, 2024 Audit Oversight Committee meeting is called to order. Will the city clerk call the roll, please?
Chair Seaman?
Here.
Vice Chair Price?
Here.
Member Gahn? Excused. Member Allen Plensky?
Present.
Member Kircher? Excused. Thank you, Chair. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, announcement regarding compliance with open meeting law. City clerk, has this meeting been notified and posted in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, it has, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is public comment. Comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. Is there anyone wishing to be heard at this time? If no, so I'll close the public comment portion and we'll move on to item number 4. Agenda item number 4, for possible action to approve the final minutes by reference of the regular meeting of April 8th, 2024. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Please post. The motion carries. Agenda item number 5, discussion for possible action regarding audit of Innovation and Technology Department hardware asset controls. Report IT 0102324-03. Louis Haddad, Senior Information Technology Auditor, will be discussing this audit. Please go ahead. I'm sorry, I probably pronounced your name wrong. Could you clarify it for me?
No problem. For the record, I'm Louis Halad.
Halad.
I am your Senior IT Auditor. And good morning. I'm here to discuss our audit of the Innovation and Technology Department's hardware asset controls. This audit focuses on the IT department's process for monitoring the continued existence of important pieces of city hardware. That includes personal computers, servers, cell phones, iPads, networking equipment, surveillance systems, etc. All told, IT is managing more than 22,000 individual pieces of equipment for the city. Each piece of equipment is tagged with a unique ID and barcode label, and records are maintained in an asset management system called ServiceNow. It is IT's responsibility to regularly verify the location and status of these assets. When I say status, the status of an item could be it's currently in use by an employee, it is scheduled for disposal, it's sitting in the equipment cage waiting for someone to need it, things like that. While all city hardware is important, not every one of those 22,000 devices that I mentioned requires meticulous tracking. Many of these assets are low cost, they're easily replaced, they pose no security risk if they go missing. For example, we have about 5,000 computer monitors sitting on employees' desks right now. They don't cost much, we probably buy them in bulk. They don't tend to go missing, and it wouldn't keep us up at night if they went missing security-wise. So, city policy rightly recognizes that it's impractical and cost prohibitive to track these items with the same diligence as our high value and high cost items, high risk items. Therefore, our audit focused only on those high value, high risk IT items that the IT department is required to track according to city policy. These fall into 2 categories that you'll see here. The first is fixed assets. These are high dollar items, $5,000 and above, that have been capitalized by the city at the time of purchase. Finance maintains the official list of these fixed assets for each department, and at the time of our field work, this list included 261 assets, which represent a combined cost of $5 million. So of those 22,000, only 261 of them are capitalized fixed assets. The other category, it's officially called controlled non-capitalized assets. That's the name that's found in our city policy and the name that you'll find in the report. It's kind of a mouthful, so I will call those sensitive items. They're known around the city as sensitive items, though that's not their official name. This includes lower cost items, less than $5,000, that are in some way deemed to be sensitive. They're either theft prone, or they hold protected information, such as an employee's laptop, or for some other reason we decide they need to be tracked. It's important to note that each department is responsible for defining what they consider to be a sensitive item. and for maintaining a list of the sensitive items that are currently in their inventory. The IT department manages all IT hardware throughout the city. So anything that connects to the city network, any peripherals for a computer, all these things are managed by the IT department, and we would not expect the individual departments that might be using this equipment to be maintaining this list of equipment. IT manages this list for the entire city. These two categories, fixed assets and sensitive items, are to be tracked in exactly the same manner. And when referring to both these categories together, our report uses the more generic term controlled assets, and that's how I'll refer to them today when I mean both fixed assets and sensitive items. I'll call them controlled assets. We like to include a slide about why each audit is important. Hopefully it's obvious why we would want to track our important IT assets. One of the big reasons is to remain in compliance. The NRS, Nevada revised statutes that govern our state, explicitly require local governments to maintain adequate equipment records and inventory controls. On top of this state requirement, our own city policies, including one from finance and one from IT itself, lay out the responsibility for IT to periodically verify its critical asset inventory. There are a few other reasons we'd want to do this beyond that we have to. We talk a lot about cybersecurity these days. Knowing where our assets are and when one has disappeared is a basic foundational concept of cybersecurity and in protecting ourselves from vulnerability. Monitoring our controlled assets also helps mitigate risks from unauthorized equipment. There's a cost benefit as well. By maintaining accurate inventory records, we can better identify underutilized equipment that can be redeployed or retired, and saving us money on purchasing unnecessary licenses and equipment. It also improves our efficiency. Knowing where equipment is allows IT to quickly respond to maintenance needs, user requests, and threats. And also, current information helps us to accurately budget for future purchase needs and upgrades. Our objectives in completing this audit were twofold. First, to determine whether IT is appropriately verifying the location and status of its controlled assets in a periodic manner. And secondly, to determine whether the asset reports that they submit regularly to finance represent complete and accurate information. I will now summarize the three findings that are found in our report, along with the recommendations that we are making to the IT department. The first finding is around knowing what we are protecting. In the course of our audit work, we determined that IT does not label in its system which assets are considered to be controlled assets, and thus subject to this periodic inventory verification, and which assets are not controlled. All of the 22,000 items are intermingled in the asset management system without differentiation. Without some indicator of which assets are subject to inventory control and which are not, we are unable to determine whether all controlled assets are being appropriately verified. This is true of both categories of controlled assets. IT's asset management system could not produce an accurate list of the 261 fixed assets that the department is responsible for tracking, nor does the system indicate which items are considered by the department to be a sensitive item. This is especially challenging for the sensitive item list. As I mentioned, it's up to each department to define which assets it considers to be sensitive. IT does not maintain such a list, nor does it have a documented criteria of what traits it considers when determining if a particular item is sensitive. We're offering two recommendations. The first is to clearly label which hardware assets are considered to be controlled assets by placing every piece of hardware into one of these categories: fixed asset, sensitive item, or neither. Additionally, we recommend that IT develop a detailed criteria of what constitutes a sensitive IT item, and make sure that all such items are labeled appropriately in the system. Our second finding focuses on IT's procedures for verifying the location and status of a controlled asset. So this is about how we're going to verify that these assets are in place. We found that IT does not have documented procedures for how to perform asset verification. This absence of documented procedures hinders the effective training of new staff. It creates the risk of losing process knowledge with employee turnover, and increases the likelihood of inconsistent practices by employees during these asset verification procedures. The main way that IT performs asset verification is by the use of handheld barcode scanners. So department staff periodically go out to a city location and they scan the asset tags of any IT equipment that they find there. When they do that, the system automatically logs a last scan timestamp into the asset management system, leaving an audit trail for their inventory activities, which is great. We noted, however, that many controlled assets have timestamps that are years old or have no timestamps at all. IT will sometimes verify an asset's existence by alternate methods, especially when handheld scanning is not feasible. An example would be a camera high up on a street lamp that's difficult to get to, or a piece of networking equipment that's nestled up in the ceiling tiles of City Hall. In these cases, IT may visually inspect the item to verify its existence, look at the camera up on the street lamp and say, yes, I see it, it is there. Or they may use online methods to ping the equipment and receive an appropriate response back. These are valid methods for performing inventory control, but unlike the scanning method, they leave no audit trail in the asset management system to indicate that they have been verified. The result is an incomplete picture of IT's inventory efforts. We recommend that IT should document their asset verification procedures. At a minimum, these procedures should capture information on the status and location of each asset, when it was verified, by whom, and using what method. We also recommend that IT management should implement these procedures and ensure that each controlled asset is verified at least annually. Finally, we reviewed the controlled asset reports that IT submitted to Finance most recently in April and May of 2023. These are two separate reports, one for the fixed assets and one for the department's sensitive items. For the first report, Finance provided to IT a list of the 261 fixed assets that are under IT's purview and asked IT to confirm whether the items were still in inventory. In its response, IT reported that 172 of the assets were either confirmed to be in their inventory or had been properly retired through disposal, donation, or auction. For the remaining 89 assets, IT responded that there was no record of these items in the asset management system. This represents 34% of the total items and a combined cost of $2 million. The second report of sensitive items contained an unusually large number of hardware assets. It was 21,956 items in that report, and included items such as monitors, desk phones, and laptop docking stations that are low cost and low risk. IT management has subsequently acknowledged that the report does not accurately represent what they consider to be sensitive items in need of inventory control, and that the report was not properly reviewed and approved by IT management before it was provided to Finance. In order to improve this process, we recommend that IT management develop a set of procedures to ensure proper supervisory review and approval of asset reports before they are communicated to Finance. We recommend that IT reconcile their list of fixed assets with Finance's list and provide a complete and accurate report of fixed assets to Finance. We also recommend that IT provide a complete and accurate report of the department's sensitive items to Finance to ensure compliance with city policy. That concludes my report today. We appreciate the support that we've received from IT management in completing this audit. Michael Sherwood is here today, the city's Chief Innovation and Technology Officer, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about this report. Thank you. Hit the red button. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Halad. Before I go to questions from my committee, this is very disappointing. By the glaring issues within the IT department, unaccounted for assets, unapproved, inaccurate reports, and a lack of clear inventory management for the hundreds of iPhones and laptops that pose a real security threat. I know that we're not tracking items over 5,000, but isn't that a little bit of a security risk since we know it was through iPhone that brought down, was it MGM, one of the casinos? I know that we spend millions of dollars on security, and to see that we've got 2.1 million of unaccounted items in your system, and you're the IT department. I go to the IT department to ask how we do inventory when I run a business. So I guess the first question is, where are the items?
Good morning, committee. Michael Sherwood, for the record, Chief Innovation and Technology Officer. Cybersecurity is extremely important to any organization, especially in today's date and time. And obviously, this audit report reflects some areas of improvement that we need to do. To specifically answer your question, the 81 items that were noted in the report have all been accounted for. And we will be reporting that as soon as we're done with this audit committee meeting. We'll be reaching out to the auditor's office and working with them to let them verify that information.
Can you tell us where they are?
Yes, I actually have a report that I can provide to the committee. We have that to pass out. Additionally, let me explain maybe a hierarchical level of how this happened. When we build a fire station, for instance, we go ahead and install cameras in that facility. Yeah, I'll take care of it. Give me a second. When we build a fire station, we go ahead and we build the station. We will buy security cameras. We'll buy 50 of them. When finance gets that information, they'll lump it up under one asset tag or a specific item. We don't track things based on that information. Because the cameras are low dollar cost, they would be, to go back to Mr. Haddad's description, we would have those possibly listed as a non-controlled item where we're not concerned. It's a low dollar amount. Theft is not generally an issue in those areas. So it's the way that it's reported inside of our financial system, which is the true system of record, and how we were recording it in our system. We need to do a better job, for sure, yes, but the items are there, and we've implemented. I could walk through a couple of these. Item 1, specifically in the findings, we've added new drop-down menus so we can go ahead and list non-controlled, capitalized, and capitalized controlled. So we have new ways now of matching our system records with what finance has.
Have we, in the next meeting, are we going to see the formal responses to the recommendations to the report? I know we're talking about it now, but have you guys already formally responded to all the points brought up to be reviewed, or is that?
We have responded, management responses to the audit department.
Mr. Smith, can we hear from you? And are you satisfied with the reports on the unaccounted items?
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. As with all of our audit reports, we ask management to give us a formal response to be included in the report for each audit recommendation. And so if we go to the back of the report, you will see their responses. So far as it relates to these unaccounted for items, maybe Michael, do you want to read maybe your response? Do you have a copy of the report handy here?
I brought notes on just
Let me-
my
let me-
response, sorry.
Now, of course, when management provides us a response, we don't audit their responses. As a part of our follow-up process, when they come and they tell us, okay, auditors, we've completed this recommendation, then that gives us the green light to come back into the department and verify whether they've adequately addressed the recommendation. And so, as it relates to that one recommendation, IT management, as well as all department responses are reviewed by the city manager's office also. So that response says, management has reviewed the findings and identified items within the data set that were either incorrectly categorized or properly disposed of, but not documented according to policy. We are addressing these inconsistencies promptly. Since undertaking the review, all indications suggest that all items have been accounted for. Management is working with finance to validate the fixed asset records and ensure a complete and accurate accounting. So that is the formal response from management. We haven't tested that yet, but as a part of our follow-up, we will be doing that.
So they're telling you that they've been miscategorized or just don't know where they're at. I mean, they know where they're at, but they don't know where. So you are going to follow up with that and make sure that they're accounted for.
And the first step, like Mr. Sherwood shared with us, it appears that they have a listing already of the status of all of these items. And so we can start by taking that list and confirming the information that they're providing to us. That could include looking at supporting paperwork if an item was disposed of or auctioned. It could be physically going out to the location where they're representing that item is in place.
I have a question, Mr. Smith. How long have we been trying to get answers for this report? How long is this report we've been working on now?
So if you recall, a couple years ago, you did have questions about how well IT was tracking their fixed assets. And what Mr. Snelding had us do is taking IT's representation that things were in order, that they had scanned many, if not all, of the assets. We ended up doing it, looking at, I think, over 250 items. And as we were going through that process of looking at those, we didn't open up a formal audit. We were looking to just address your question through doing these procedures. As we were doing those procedures, we realized that we needed to backtrack. They did not have procedures in place. They had not adequately identified what they consider to be sensitive items. As we were looking for these items, we identified other deficiencies with the data. There were some deficiencies due to data migration issues that had occurred when they moved from Heat
Previous.
to ServiceNow, the system they're now using. I can tell you, they have ServiceNow, it's kind of the blue chip software for managing assets. They have a good tool, and now it's important that they implement procedures to adequately identify what's going to be inventoried on an annual basis, that they have procedures for their staff to follow in tracking these items. And so in response to your question, this has been an ongoing process, and like I said, with our initial steps, we realized that we needed to open up a formal audit, and that's what we did. I think approximately maybe 9-10 months ago, and we completed this audit in May. We have worked with Michael and Chris, and they're supportive of our recommendations. And
It's a collaborative process, and our systems have improved. We are getting better each time we've gone through this process. Do we have some system nuances and articulations we need to go back and do? Yes. And it's in the audit report, item 1 and 2, both specifically address lack of procedures that we have now tightened up, including being able to go around and not just do hand scanning, but use electronic means, which wasn't documented in our original policy. And then we've also now implemented the features that the audit department recommended, which is the non-capitalized controlled items, as well as capitalized controlled items, which will further match up with what finance has in their system, which is the true system of record.
also, if I could just mention one other thing. As we've gone through this process, finance has realized that they need to update their fixed asset policy and procedure. And
Do I have any other questions from the committee before I move forward?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It seems like there's a couple of main issues. One is dollar value of the assets that may be not located but have been located. So the dollar value always gives someone a concern. And then secondly, the distinction between sensitive and non-sensitive assets and the potential risk that is involved with that. I think with the dollar value, once we understand that, it becomes less of a concern. But the sensitive items, the lack of definition of what is a sensitive item, it's hard to track anything if you have yet to identify exactly what is or what is not sensitive, regardless of dollar amount. And so the security issue is the one that becomes the concern. And I think if we could just talk briefly about the sensitive items and the security controls, the mitigating controls over those. For example, yeah, maybe that one, we're not sure where it's at, but we know we've cut off all access, so it's basically a useless piece of technology because it's not connected, even though at one point it maybe was. So I think it's that dual issue that we're trying to understand, the dollar value, and that we found those. I think you get more comfortable on that. It's just that sensitivity, that inherent risk with IT, and how do we feel very comfortable that that is being accurately accounted for. Is there some can we have just some discussion about, again, on the sensitive items? I mean, that by their very nature.
We've added the categories into ServiceNow. We had a procedure that was outdated, which the department has clearly identified to us. As far as laptops, and we'll use them as a sensitive item category, they're all in several systems, so it's not, it wasn't tied to our inventory or to our control system. So we're monitoring those assets, they're encrypted. If a laptop would be lost, the threat to our internal organization is always there, but minimized. So now it's a matter of, we need to make, when an audit or the finance department or any department asks anyone in IT for a listing of all sensitive items, we should be able to run a report effortlessly that lists those items out. A lot of those high security items might even be a firewall, a network switch. Again, those are controlled behind locked rooms and doors. So it's a matter of us doing better record keeping and better controls and better utilizing our system. I think the audit department, and thank you to City Council and City Manager's Office, we have ServiceNow. So we have a good tool. Now it's a matter of how do we hone our skills in? How do we really use a tool? You know, everybody can get a shovel and dig a hole, but there is some kind of, capability. The more you learn about it, the better you know how to control your tool, the better output you get at the end. And that's what we need to focus on. And the audit department has clearly recognized that we do have some areas we need to focus on, and we need to work with our partner department in finance and make sure that we're matching up as their accounting rules change and as their way of accounting and tracking items. We need to make sure that we're tracking on our back end too, so that it matches up. It may never be perfect within both systems, but we should be pretty close.
And you made a good point earlier, and I agree with it, and we know from finance how finance accounts for things. We bought 50 cameras, it's this total. We put it in, we depreciate it for this long. They're not depreciating each individual camera or knowing, and therefore when you do a rehab, a renovation, something changes, cameras get pulled out. They're lumped together financially, but they're broken out specifically for IT purposes, and in that reconciliation is where, kind of where the rubber meets the road, improving upon that process so that those are congruent, and then letting the auditors do their job, which is to review it, not to create it, not to tell you what to do, but after you've told them what you are doing, for them to just verify. And so everybody has clearly delineated responsibilities, ownership, and and accountability on that.
I can give you another example. A 911 console is listed in the list of items. A 911 console consists of furniture, consists of computers, radios, a bunch of different equipment entered as one item from a financial perspective. I got to do a better job of breaking all that out, and what are my sensitive items? A radio might be a sensitive item that I need to control, where the furniture itself is on another department's responsibility for managing and tracking. But it's lumped from a financial, we're talking different things. You're understanding what I'm saying. There's financial controls, which are specific to finance and how they categorize assets. And then there's IT controls or IT assets. We don't track monitors because basically we do track them in our system, but not as a fixed asset. We track them because in 5 years, I need to know from budgeting purposes, how many monitors do I need to replace citywide? So I need to have that in ServiceNow. And where the audit team pointed out to us is they were just lumped, I think, Louis said, 21,000 items just in the system. We got to go back now and really focus in on categorizing to the 3 categories that are out there.
With the sensitive items, maintain its priority due to their
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sherwood is an awesome director here at the city. He does a fabulous job. I have no doubt that he will fix whatever accounting and inventory controls we need, undoubtedly. I'd like to particularly drive home those 261 fixed assets that are of high dollar or the most interest or the most priority for me. I want to ensure that you know where those are at all times. You brought up the 911 dispatch, which brought a question to mind. Of course, our dispatch right now is at Fire Station 1 in the basement, totally within your control. We're going to move towards a joint dispatch center very proudly in Ward 4 in the future. Will those still be under your control, or is there some sort of different mechanism because will they be Metro's technology to record? Have we thought about that?
Thank you for the question. We don't know yet because those details haven't been decided as far as, but what we could most likely venture, doesn't matter where the asset is, if we're connected, we have city assets and people working in different buildings that may not belong to us physically. We still manage and track those assets. Everybody has a laptop. They take them all over. We manage and do the best we can to ensure that we have accurate accounting of all those devices. So no matter where the asset is, we're going to be able to track it.
I have a couple of questions for finance, if you don't mind answering them for me, Ms. Helsley. Why didn't finance bring the problems with the IT asset reports to the attention of IT management?
Good morning, Susan Helsley, Chief Financial Officer. I'm going to defer to my accounting operations manager and our fixed asset person. I know that we do have fixed asset reports that we run periodically. We don't always reconcile those to the dollar, so they may have some more information for that.
Okay, understandably, but this is unaccounted for 2.1 million with the system, so, oh, she's here.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful.
They're here.
Okay.
This is Ariana Rodriguez Mora, Accounting Operations Manager, acting. And so the way that we do the record keeping for capital assets is every year. And we use invoices because that's the amount of money that we're paying out to our vendors to acquire these assets. And what Director Michael was explaining is, for instance, if the invoice actually says you're buying 3 microphones and they're over $5,000, we record them in our fixed asset module, whereas they might say, well, each microphone is less than $5,000, so we're not going to keep track of it because it's like non-control capital asset. So those are the discrepancies that we have that we need to work together to kind of reconcile against one definition of what a capital asset is.
It seems as though, as we briefly mentioned, finance records it a certain way so they can put it on the books and depreciate it, and then the departments themselves record it, basically the subsidiary ledger, the detail. And so how often that detail gets reconciled to what's on the finance books, and that happens annually?
Biannually, by policy.
Biannually, by policy. So it is currently within requirements happening biannually by policy, and it's just the nature of the operation in fixed assets that, every 2 years you true it up to the subsidiary ledger and you see where the discrepancies are, and then put processes in place to maintain the little discrepancy as possible. So that procedure is happening regularly now, and we're now on our 2-year cycle, and this is what we found. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is this NRS or city policy?
A city policy.
City policy. So maybe there's a recommendation of what we can do with policy to make it easier for us to keep records.
So, and I do want to point this out. So basically, even our federal government is looking at the mandate of the $5,000 minimum threshold to capitalize assets, and they're now changing that to $10,000. So even if we're buying capital assets with federal money, it's no longer going to be $5,000 anymore. It'll be raised to $10,000. I just recently attended a conference where most governments are using a $50,000 threshold or a $100 threshold, because then they're relying on departments to keeping that detailed subsidiary ledger, to where they can go back and say, okay, so even though we're not recognizing in our financial statements these assets that are that are under the $5,000 or $10,000 ledger, we can actually see them in the detail that departments are keeping. So I think it's just kind of coming together to an understanding of what kind of records we're going to be asking departments to keep versus the amount of records that finance is going to be keeping for audit purposes and financial statement reporting.
Yes, we can do both, right?
Yes.
Because I think it's really important to be able to track our assets, especially since phones are even sensitive to, I know that we can shut them down when they're not being used, but how do you know if you don't know where they are if they're being used? So we need to come up with a system to make sure that we're not a threat with cybersecurity. I know you have no problem, Mr. Sherwood, coming to us for more money to keep us safe, and we have been, and I appreciate that. But we need to look at some of these other things that pose a cybersecurity threat. And I think the last thing I would like to say is I would love for the audit committee to make sure that we get the documentation of the $2.1 million that we're not able to find of unaccounted assets. Do we have any other statements or questions from the committee? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one point of clarification. In the audit and the follow-up, nothing is missing, correct?
They're not accountable yet.
Louis Halad, Senior IT Auditor. Our audit covered what was currently in the asset management system at the time of our field work, and also the reports that were given to finance. And so
Which are non-comprehensive, correct?
What's that?
Which is non-comprehensive, correct?
All that I can represent is that the report that IT gave to finance said there were no record of these items in their system. And Mr. Sherwood probably has some follow-up comments to that, but that is what they reported to finance.
I can follow up. At the time they audited, their report is accurate. We did not have the proper categories in our system, so we had to go back out and specifically for the 81 items in question, go pull invoices with the help of finance, break down the invoice, look for the items, and then go out in the field and properly input them or categorize them into our system.
And that's been done, correct?
That has been done. The 81 items
89.
have been accounted for. So accounted for means that some of them were retired, they've been accounted
Yeah,
for. Some of
but-
them are still in operation. All the 81 items or the $2.1 million has been accounted for.
Yes, that's my question.
Physically, and we'll provide that documentation to the audit department. Now, what we need to do, and I want to be very clear, is there's still 21,000 assets or items inside our system that we need to work with finance on and go through those. No, it doesn't mean we have to go through line by line. We'll be able to group some of those items together, and we need to add the categories that the audit office has asked us to do, which we will do. But the 81 items in question are accounted for.
And I'll add, Louis Halad, Senior IT Auditor, as a part of our follow-up, we will go and touch each of those 89 items, fixed assets, and make sure that they are accounted for.
So, to be correct, as of now, we do not have any documentation, the audit committee or us, on where those items are, and it has not been verified as of now. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have not received the report yet of where those items are, but expect to receive it soon and verify it as soon as we receive it.
Yeah, we look forward to that.
Part of your process, if I could add, is part of the process is the audit committee receives the report. Now we will go back and we will show you and demonstrate where those items are.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to that. What time frame are we looking at so we can bring this back to a meeting and be satisfied with the report?
Brian Smith, acting city auditor. Our next audit committee meeting is in October, and if you'd like, we could bring you a status update in October on these audit recommendations. In addition to IT's audit recommendations, twice a year we bring all audit recommendations and we brief you on the status of those recommendations. And so we'll be doing that at the next meeting, and we'll do that with these recommendations too.
Okay, so that would be enough time for you to finish this up with the 22,000 items. That's a lot of items.
We will have these 81 items for the record.
Okay.
81 items that were identified in our report, reconciled prior to the October meeting with the audit team. We will continue to work, I believe in our management recommendations, that we asked for a year to go back through all items. Work that gives us a couple cycles through finance to double check how our systems are working together. Also allows us to continue to work with the audit team and identifying how we can make better improvements. But the 81 items by October, yes.
Okay, thank you. So
Thank
we
you.
will do that. And we've gone on so long. Am I supposed to do a motion now to accept the report? If there are no further questions?
It should be a motion. Given the discussion, I might suggest that we
Is it on now? There you go. Deputy City Attorney John Curtis, given the discussion, Madam Chairwoman, I might suggest you simply continue this matter for, till the next audit committee meeting, and then, excuse me, look at the revised report that they're going to be updating before you move to accept the report. That might be the most appropriate way. But I'm subject to discussion of the committee, of course, but I'm just thinking, since there's a lot of open issues that have been brought up, it might be easier rather than approving a motion to approve, making a motion and approving it, to just continue the matter till the next meeting.
Thank you. So I would like to make a motion to continue the matter till our next meeting, which is October 7th, 2024. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Please post. The motion carries. Agenda item number 6, report by staff regarding current staffing audits and projects. Brian Smith, acting city auditor, will give the report. Please go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Smith, acting city auditor. Our office currently has 6 staff, as shown on this slide. Our staff have a variety of certifications, including certified public accountants, certified internal auditors, certified fraud examiners, certified information system auditors, as well as other certifications. In addition, they have a variety of backgrounds, including financial auditing, corporate internal auditing, government internal auditing, financial and retail crime investigation, IT project management, software development, and law enforcement. Their education, certifications, and experience contribute greatly to the success of our office. We are currently completing performance audits of the city departments shown on this slide. We are completing an audit of Public Safety's evidence room, in which we have been reviewing and testing the controls over the intake, storage, and disposition of evidence gathered by the city marshals. We are also completing an audit of Public Safety's inmate commissary contract, in which we're reviewing compliance with the terms of the contract, as well as controls over the administration of the contract. We are also auditing elements of a program within the Youth Development and Social Innovation Department known as Batteries Included, which provides after-school educational activities for high school students on leadership, community service, career planning, and preparation for college. In addition, we recently began an audit of the Business Licensing Compliance Division of the Community Development Department. We also continue to verify the completion of previously issued audit recommendations as part of our follow-up program. And over the last fiscal year, we have verified the completion of over 47 audit recommendations. In addition to our performance audits, we are involved in several significant administrative projects. We recently purchased and implemented a new audit management software known as Teammate Plus. We've begun using this software with our new audits. We're also updating our internal policies and procedures to coincide with the recently released 2024 updates to the Government Accountability Office's Government Auditing Standards, also known as the Yellow Book. We follow these standards in completing our audits. In addition, we recently encouraged city management to update and improve the city's fraud policies and procedures, which haven't been updated since 2017. We are now working with the city manager's office and the city attorney's office to do so. And that concludes my report. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Comment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your thorough review here, and I know we've spoken privately. I just want to make it mentioned for the record. When we do these audits and the objectives are listed, of course, on the one we previously discussed, it was to determine whether the IT was appropriately verifying the location and status of controlled assets, determine whether IT's controlled asset reports to finance are complete and accurate. I would like on every one of these audits that we do in the future that cost savings also be prioritized. It sounds like we in IT are filing things incorrectly, and we want this filing system to be and inventory control more appropriate, and of course, we do. But in your audits, I would like to find cost savings at every single opportunity. And all the audits that you mentioned, anywhere that we can save costs, that's why we exist as audit committee, in my opinion.
Great. Thank you, Councilwoman. Brian Smith, Acting City Auditor. Yes, we can certainly do that. Sometimes as we identify deficiencies and controls, it's hard to assign a dollar value to the cost savings to the city. In the past, we've struggled with this because if we identify a missing control, if there are missing cash controls and there's the opportunity for fraud, for skimming of cash, without that control, there's no telling what the liability is to the city. So it's hard to assign a dollar value to certain audit recommendations. But where we can certainly try to do that.
That would be
Just
great. Thank you.
a quick comment on that note as well as the internal audit function, and as you just go through and describe the team that you have, it is a small team. It's a fairly small team for the size of the city and the amount of assets, and we talk about the missing assets as a percentage of the city's total assets. It's even though it's a significant number, it is very de minimis.
Right.
And the cost-benefit analysis of your team and the work involved to track down every nickel and every penny, important that we look at the overall cost-benefit. And that's why I mentioned to Mr. Sherwood the sensitive nature of certain items as being a higher priority over others. It's not always the dollar value, but it's the sensitive nature of the equipment. And so, I think with the team that you have, considering the scope and size of the audit adjustments and the assets of the city in general, that you guys do a fantastic job, and finding those cost savings is important. But a lot of that's also the job of the finance department, and it's their job to do these things. And it's your job to check to make sure that they're being done, and not to create policy, but to review policy that's been created and ensure that it's being followed properly. And a lot of that cost-benefit analysis, as important as it is, the internal audit department and the 5 or 6 of you that you have, that's a hard standard for you to live up to. It's got to be more of a financial standard, with you coming in at the end, checking it and verifying it, and not being the creators of it, but the auditors of it, and keeping those distinct and clear. You guys do a great job, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Committee Member Price.
I would also like to say that this committee has been so instrumental in bringing in new procedures. I can't even imagine where we would be with IT without you coming in and letting them know where we needed changes. And I think it's important that you continue to do that with these departments and find places where we can improve. We're the city of Las Vegas. We need to be the best. So I appreciate it. And as my colleague said here, you are a small team but mighty. So thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Seaman.
And this item is for report only, and no motion is required. Agenda item number 7, discussion for possible action on the annual audit plan fiscal year 2024-2025. Brian Smith, Acting City Auditor, will present the annual audit plan. Please go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Brian Smith, Acting City Auditor. In accordance with the City Auditor's Office policy statement, the City Auditor is required to submit an annual audit plan to the Audit Oversight Committee each year for review and comment. This has typically been presented to the committee each July meeting. Last year, the committee approved Mr. Snelding's plan, which was to audit each department 4 times and each office 2 times over a 5-year period. Accordingly, we've been using this plan in identifying departments and offices to audit. While this current plan makes every department and office subject to an audit, I believe we need to move toward a more risk-based approach to selecting which departments, policies, functions to audit, so that we are able to provide increased value to the city with the audits we were able to complete with the few auditors that we have. In fact, the City Auditor's policy statement states that our audit plan should be based on a citywide risk assessment. Now, while our office has not completed a citywide risk assessment, we routinely assess risk in identifying what functions, policies, and controls to audit when we begin an audit within a department. However, I believe it would be valuable for our office to begin developing a citywide risk assessment framework with specified risk factors that could be used to complete an annual risk assessment of the city's departments from which to create our annual audit plans. This will take some time, and we'll need to work with city management in gathering a variety of information on the city's departments and offices to be included in the risk assessment. As we await the appointment of the next city auditor, and with your approval, I propose that in the coming year, we continue to work off of the previously approved audit plan and select departments or offices to audit which have only had 1 or no audits over the past 5 years. I also propose that in the coming year, we develop a risk assessment framework that we can use to complete a citywide risk assessment from which we can create our future audit plans. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from the members? Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I agree with your review of a risk-based approach instead of just a routine, every, so many departments every 5 years. The risk-based approach centers around everything that we discussed today, which is not always the number of employees or the dollar value, but the resulting risk as a result of that. And so I think that risk-based approach, gets us there more effectively over time. Thank you.
I agree. And with that, may I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn? Is that the motion to approve? I apologize. That's your motion.
There's a motion. All in favor of both, actually.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Please post. Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item number 8, discussion regarding topics for future agenda items. Comments made during this portion of the agenda by individual members shall refer solely to proposals for future agenda items, and any discussion shall be limited to whether or not such proposed item are within the purview of the committee and/or whether such proposed items shall be placed on a future agenda. No discussion regarding the substance of any such proposed topic shall occur, and no action shall be taken. Does anyone have suggestions regarding future agenda item topics? Kind of goes with what we just talked about. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9. Agenda item number 9 is citizens' participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. No subject may be acted upon by the committee unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, come forward and give your name for the record, the amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of any time, and any single speaker is allowed may be limited. Is there anyone wishing to be heard at this time? Seeing none, I'll close citizens' participation, and we'll move on to item number 10. Item number 10 is adjournment. The next Audit Oversight Committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 7th, 2024, and with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.